Today's lesson focuses on how do you graph a function, and we're going to particularly look at how to do that on a calculator. We'll look at a few examples and use both the calculator's graphing and table features to do that. The first function we're going to look at is number 1, y equals x, or f of x equals x in function notation. So go ahead and turn the calculator on, which is this button here. And to enter an equation into the calculator to graph it, we want to hit y equals, which is right here. Now if there's any equations already in your calculator, maybe you're borrowing a calculator that someone else is using, you want to clear them out with the clear button, which is located right here. So go ahead and hit that. Once the calculator's y equals is clear, then you're going to enter our equation, which is just y equals x, or f of x equals x, and this is the button we're going to use for variables. It's x comma t comma theta comma n. It's useful in a bunch of different situations, but that's what we're going to use for our x. So go ahead and hit that button, and you'll see x show up in your y equals. Now there's a bunch of different y equals, so you can graph several different equations at a time. y1 equals, y2 equals, and but for right now we're just doing one at a time. So y1 equals x is the equation we're going to graph. Now the next thing to do is when we graph this, my suggestion is anytime you have graph paper that already has predetermined sort of x and y limits or constraints here, let's make the graph on the calculator match the same exact coordinates of the graph on our paper, so that when we graph it they're going to look the same. To do that, we're going to set up the window on our calculator, which is the window button right here. The way your calculator was set up might be slightly different than mine, but you can see the x minimum in mine is -10 and the x maximum is 10. What we want those to be are the x minimum -6 and the x maximum +6 from the graph on our paper. Similarly, if you look at the y values, your y minimum on my calculator, it looks like -10 to 10, but what I want it to be is this -6 to 6. So go ahead and adjust those now. The x scale and the y scale, that should be a 1 there. That just shows you the tick marks. What are each tick mark counting by? We're counting by 1s. And so that's what the x scale and the y scale are. After you've adjusted your window, you want to hit the graph button right there in the top right, and that'll take you to the graph. And knowing what we know about the line y equals x, this diagonal line on our calculator is exactly what we were expecting to see when we graph the line y equals x. Now before I put that on the worksheet that you have there, before I put it on mine, before you put it on yours, let's take a look at a few other functions the calculator has that will help us graph in the future. We can do the table feature, not just the graph of the line, but you can see right here is the word table. If we do second and then hit graph again, that second graph feature will take us to a table of values that we'll be able to see x and y coordinates for points along this line. Here's my table, and as you would expect in the line y equals x, when x is 0, y is 0. When x is 1, y is 1. When x is 2, y is 2. Now if your table doesn't look the way that mine looks, you might have to set up your table. You can see the second window option there is called table set, so do second and then window to get to the table set menu. The most common table setup is to start at 0 and to have a delta table of 1. Again, that's how much you're counting by for your x's. If you start at 0 and count by 1s, you'll see 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 down the x column. We'll adjust that from time to time, but for the most part, for the table setup, 0 and 1 are the two values that you want in there. With that corrected or adjusted, let's go back to the table, which is second graph. Again, I can see in my table from x equals 0 all the way to x equals 6. You can adjust that when you're when your cursor is in the x column by using the up and the down arrows, that can take you to some negative x values. It can take you to some positive x values greater than 6. Here I've adjusted mine now so that it's going from -3 to 3. Now these are just coordinate pairs of points on our line. So you can see -1, 1 is a coordinate pair based on my table of, -1, -1, excuse me, is a coordinate pair based on my table right here. And I'm going to take a few of these, we'll do 3 of them for this exercise. I'm going to take 3 of these coordinate pairs and I'm going to take those and plot them on my graph paper. So -1, -1 is right about here. So I'm going to put that dot there. I'll label that dot, that point A, and off here to the side I'm going to say that A is the point -1, -1. Okay, I'm going to look at another point. Let's say right here. We'll call that one B, and B is the point 1, 1. That's in my table. And the last one, how about 3, 3, is going to be the point right there. We'll call that C, and C is the point 3, 3. So I'm labeling my points. I'm writing out their coordinates. I'm going to connect those with a straight line since this is a linear function. And let's see if I can do that here. Draw a straight line right through those points. And maybe I can extend it out this way. And there's the graph of y equals x. I've plotted 3 points. You can see them a little bit here, here, and here. And my line is accurate with 3 of the points plotted. So in general, different equations, we're going to plot maybe a different number of points, but for our purposes here we'll do 3 points and label 3 so that we get the hang of graphing. Let's try this again now with the equation f of x equals x squared, or y equals x squared. Quadratic, we've seen that before, we know it's going to look like a parabola, but let's use the calculator and the table feature to do that. So again, we're going to go back to the y equals to put in our new equation. Clear out the existing equation with the clear button. And then we're going to type in our new equation, y equals x squared, using, again, this x comma t comma theta comma n button as our x. And then you can see the x squared button right here is what puts in the exponent of 2. So there you have your x squared. Now our window should still be the same because we set it for the last graph, and our x min -6 and x max +6, y min -6, y max 6 on our graph is still the same, so we can go straight to look at the graph by hitting the graph button. And here's the parabola that we expected we would get with x squared, the parent function. And now let's take a look at the table of values to pick a few of these specific points off. In future equations, we might not know them off the top of our head like we would with the first example and this example. So let's practice that with second graph takes us to the table. The table picks up right where we left off with the first equation, with an x of -3 all the way down to an x of +3. And again, we've got points in the x column, y column as xy coordinates. And let's plot a few that fit on our graph. -3, 9 is too far, it's not going to fit on our graph. So let's start with -2, 4. So -2, 4 is a point right about here. If I can get it to work, there it is. -2, 4, let's call that point A. A is -2, 4. Alright, let's do 0, 0, the origin. We'll call that B. B is 0, 0. And then why don't we do 2, 4 over here. Let's see if I can, there we go. And we'll call that C. C is 2, 4. Connect those points. We could plot more if we needed to. 1, 1, -1, 1 to see more detail on this. Right now, again, we're just using the calculator to pick a few points to get a rough sketch. So that's how you can use your calculator to get a few points on a graph, to get the shape of the graph, and to transfer it onto graph paper that you have.